let's move over to the defensive side of the ball and talk about the guys up front along that defensive line. This group brought back several guys from last year, including their top sack producers in Deonta Johnson and Chad Stevens. How did that unit look in the spring, and did anyone stand out to you?
The defensive line is definitely the best unit on the team. I mean, when they first came in 2020, I said, the coaches have got the job in 2019, but then they're basically the entire defensive line. There was like three guys they played the whole year, and all those guys moved on. They brought in like 9 scholarship defensive linemen in 2020. All those guys came into the program, played right away, and then you got the extra year with COVID. So they're all like 5th and sometimes 6th-year guys for the most part up front. They've all played together. They've all developed. I would say their greatest strength is kind of strength in numbers. They don't really have like a dominant, NFL draft pick, but they're all just solid, and they're all like, you can go kind of 2, 3 deep across the board. They're all interchangeable in many ways. They really stuff the run. That's their strength. They've gotten better at pass rushing. You mentioned Lampley. He's kind of like your one true pass rusher. Chad Stevens is another guy. And Deontay Johnson on the interior can really, rush the passer as well. So just a really good group. And I think they're going to be the backbone of this team from a leadership perspective and also production defensively.
They got a couple P4 transfers that they're going to bring in. Do you think they'll have an impact at all on this team in 2024?
Yeah, Jaden McKenzie from Ohio State will definitely play. He's kind of in that mix with Elijah Morris, Deontay Johnson at defensive tackle, Sarad Ware is another guy. So that's 4 seniors right there at D tackle. I mean, there's not too many programs in America that have 4 senior D tackles that have played a lot of football who are going to rotate in your 2 deep. So those guys will play on the edge. Raheem Craig is kind of your new starting. They kind of, it's like a stand-up defensive end outside linebacker position. So he'll kind of start there, play a lot there, and I think great fit for this defense wasn't really a fit for what was happening at Louisville. So I think he'll play a lot at outside linebacker, kind of on that edge position. So I expect both of them to play. I expect them to rotate 8 to 9 guys up front, get a ton of bodies in there, and I think this group will be very productive overall.
Moving over to the linebackers, they took some hits this offseason. They lose Jeremy Lewis and BJ Davis to graduation, and Taylor Jackson transfers to Liberty. They do bring back the second leading tackler from a year ago, and Mike Edwards III, Zakai Barker, and others. They also bring in Damian Wilson over from Missouri. How did the linebackers look in the spring?
I would say definitely improved throughout the spring. Still, I would say, in my opinion, have some question marks. Now, the linebackers coach, defensive coordinator Blake Carroll, is very high on this group from a talent perspective, and I trust in his judgment in this defense. But, anytime you lose a guy like Taylor Jackson, who was kind of a rock in the middle, very surprising when he transferred, to be honest. Didn't expect him to transfer, but I think he thought he was going to get, the opportunity to go to a Power 5 or Power 4, whatever we're calling it now, school. Ended up going to Liberty. So, you miss him, but I think that opens the door for Barker. And the one thing we've heard about Barker from Blake Carroll is he missed his freshman year with a knee injury. But he was, even when he wasn't able to play, he was the smartest guy in position meetings, knew everybody's call, linebacker, DBs, D-line. Last year was his first time playing as a backup. Now he kind of looks like the guy. Him and Damian Wilson are kind of competing for the job at Mike, linebacker. And then you got Mike Edwards, who's kind of the more of the the wheel linebacker, who's going to play more in space. I think they feel really good about him. And then you got some younger guys who just need to get their feet wet. So they feel good about those guys. Jeremy Lewis, he was kind of more of the hybrid outside linebacker, dropping the coverage guy, kind of like what Raheem Craig's going to do. So, I think they feel good about those guys being replaced. It's just you kind of have to go on the field and see how it looks, of course, come game day.
The defensive backfield didn't lose a lot in terms of numbers, but it did lose an impact player in Julius Wood to graduation. He was the Pirates' leading tackler in 2023 and first-team All-AC player. They brought back guys like Siobhan Ravel, Isaiah Brown Murray, and Dontavius Nash, among others. The secondary looks like it could be really good in 2024. What were your takeaways from the spring?
I feel good about the secondary. Like, Savon Revel could play anywhere in America. I don't know if y'all saw the article published today by 24/7 Sports, but he was offered basically $350,000 by SEC schools and ended up staying at ECU. So he's got a chance to be a day one. I think scouts project him as a day two pick at corner right now, second, third round. It wouldn't shock me if he's a first round pick if he shows more playmaking ability. He's a 6'2" corner who can run, 4'4", huge vertical leap, broad jump. He's just still pretty raw, but he's showed last year he can really be good. So, like, you feel good about one corner spot, and then the other corner spot, and Antoine Jackson transferred. He was a solid player as a freshman last year, and Isaiah Brown-Murray ended up splitting time with him last year. So now he's kind of more your full-time guy on the other side. I think he's got a chance to have a breakout year as a redshirt sophomore. Safety is my concern because Julius Wood, he was so good. I mean, he was an eraser in the run game. Not elite in pass coverage, but he was just dominant in the run game. And that's really what ECU hangs his hat on defensively. They were like top 25 run defense, top 40 overall defense because of stopping the run. So can they find another safety? You mentioned Dontavius Nash. He's more of the pass coverage safety. I think he's got a chance to be a really good player in terms of getting interceptions, but who's going to step up as more of your run-stopping safety? Devin King, Omar Rogers kind of are competing there, and I think they have the potential. But Julius Wood, he was a difference maker, and I do wonder how they're going to replace him.
Can you tell us a little bit more about some of these transfers coming in, and is there anyone that kind of stuck out to you?
Gavin Gibson is a kind of like a hybrid nickel/safety from Maryland who had a really good spring, and I think is going to end up playing a lot in the slot, kind of that hybrid nickel position as this season goes on. So look for big things out of him. He actually was a high school teammate of Isaiah Brown-Murray, so you kind of have that like natural connection on the back end, which is big as far as chemistry in the secondary. They also added Andrew Wilson-Lamp. Really, if you could draw up a corner, like on create a player, he would kind of be the guy. He's like 6'2", 6'3", long, can run. He's just kind of raw. I mean, he's similar to Siobhan, but needs to be a little bit more aggressive and physical at corner. But I think his upside's there. It's just you got to see it on a consistent basis. They also added Aiden Duncanson, a transfer from UNC, who's a redshirt freshman. He was a high school commit of ECU before flipping to UNC, and I think he kind of regretted that decision after 1 year in Chapel Hill. So he's got ability. He just hasn't played. So, they've added transfers. I like what they've done. They've added a lot of transfers on the back end. They've also got some homegrown talent. There's plenty of options. It's just a matter of, with a new safeties coach and Damon Magazoo, who was an all-conference safety here, how does it all kind of come together on the back end, which is always, the chemistry is the biggest thing I have question marks about. How is everybody going to mesh once the season arrives?
If you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season here in 2024, who would that be?
I would roll with Zakai Barker. I think he did something ridiculous last year. He only played like 70 or 80 defensive snaps, but he had like a tackle every 2 or 3 plays or something crazy. Like he just has a nose for the football, and he's kind of an interesting player because like he's only probably like 5'10", 220. And he's like an inside Mike linebacker. So he's like undersized, which is why he's at ECU. But he had offers, like I said, from like Harvard, Yale, extremely smart, explosive first step. So he is like, as soon as the ball is snapped, he is where the play is going. And I just think he is going to rack up the tackles. I do worry about his, can he be exposed in the pass game? Maybe. But I think he'll be so good against the run and so good doing what he's supposed to do that he's going to be extremely valuable and have a all conference caliber season.